week.
Is he doing all right?
Is he doing better? Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Okay, we're starting. Hi, la 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 la, la la la. Against all airline cancellations, and to Katie who's with us, and Zahava who will watch, and maybe Yael is there. I know somebody else is watching. And let's make this a little colder. And to my mother who watches every week, Razat Hashem, she's now traveling in Switzerland, and she sends me a picture from her hotel room over the parking lot. It looks like a postcard. It's unbelievable. Switzerland, God bless them. What was I thinking on the way over here? Well, of course, we're getting closer to Tishrei, and it's quite intense, for me at least, thinking that Tishrei is coming. Really, I was joking that I'm not ready for Purim, for sure not ready for Elul, and all the more so Tishrei. But it's really true. It's just too much to be ready for. Maybe you can get ready for one holiday. Maybe you can get ready for Simchat Torah. Maybe by the time Simchat Torah comes around, I can get ready. But Rosh Hashanah, it's so big, and then you have like really a week, and then it's Yom Kippur, and then a couple days later, 3 days later, it's Sukkot, and then immediately after it's Simchat Torah, and Shmini Atzeret, really. It's just so much. It's like, how can you possibly have the kelim for it? An interesting thing is that every year, the holidays get bigger. Like for me, the significance of the holidays get bigger. So whatever preparation I had in the past isn't enough for the holidays now. It's like a runner. that 5 kilometers at one point was like a big deal for them. But when they start running 20 kilometers, it's no big deal. It's like 5 kilometers to a second. I remember being totally overwhelmed by Tishrei in my early years of, for sure becoming Baal Tshuva, but even when we first got married, it was just too much for me. And I got to the point where I could handle it. And then I got to the point where I was trying to really understand what's going on, and it's amazing. Anyhow, B'ezrat Hashem. Also on my mind is the hostages that somehow survived a year. And peace and chocolate in Switzerland from Yael. And somehow survived a year, so tragic, these 6 people that were murdered. And the army was so close to them, who knows what's going to be with the war and the hostages in the future. And the debate tonight in America that, at least on Israeli TV, they're very excited about it. Fascinating. So on the way over, I was thinking, I talk to Hashem a lot. I talk about it in the lessons that Rabbi Nachman talks about how we have to speak with Hashem like He's our best friend. And that I learned from Tevye the milkman how to speak with Hashem. And a lot of times I feel like Tevye the milkman with 5 daughters and the 2 sons, the grandkids, they don't cause me any stress. Oh Hashem, very cute. I don't know, do you know that we had a granddaughter?
No, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hannah Inbar. Inbar is my son-in-law's mother. Very cute. So what was I thinking? What was the prayer that I was thinking on the way over here? Ana Hashem Oshiana. Like that's just really what came out. Ana Hashem Oshiana. And then I was just repeating, Ana Hashem Oshiana, Ana Hashem Oshiana, Ana Hashem Oshiana. And then I realized, no, you have to add, Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. Not just enough to pull me out of my troubles and afflictions. Also, Hashem, pull me up and help me to be successful. So B'ezrat Hashem, that's the easiest prayer to say. Ana Hashem Oshiana, Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. And we say it, of course, in Hallel and before a Brit. When you're holding the little baby, the father says, Ana Hashem Oshiana, Ana Hashem Hatzlichana, Shema Yisrael. So B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, so we're continuing in lesson Samech Bet, 62, and we're getting pretty close to the end. There's only a few pages left, not so many. And what we're going to learn tonight, we're going to skip over a little bit of it. So what we've been learning about, I actually have a summary here, and I think I should read the summary before I we'll get back to the lesson, just a refresher. So Jewish eating in holiness affects a union between the Holy One and His divine presence. Eating in holiness requires purifying one's food. This is accomplished through perfected faith, the product of an intellect sharpened through the study of the Shulchan Aruch, and a reliance on faith. Faith is perfected by drawing close those who are distant from God. Now, why is faith perfected by drawing close those that are distant from God? Because if you're able to draw somebody far from Hashem closer, you'll find that you bring yourself closer. If you ever have to take somebody to the hospital, you'll find that your relationship with them is much closer. Even driving in a car with somebody, much closer. Serving in Gaza, much closer. All of these things create a bond, but when you're bringing somebody closer to Hashem, you have to answer all their questions. Answering those questions strengthens yourself. So faith is perfected by drawing close those that are distant from God. One has to raise up the sparks of holiness in the letters of speech from the realm of the other side. This removes the life force from the klipot, causing those that were distant from God to cast away their heretical beliefs and adhere to Jewish faith. So he says, how do we bring people closer? People that are far away? We do it through speech. And speech, I guess it has that klipat noga. It has this neutral, it's a funny thing, I mentioned that my granddaughter Chana Imbar, so someone in the family asked my wife, Noga, would you want anybody named after you? And she said, well, in Chabad, nobody's going to name a kid after me. Klipat noga. Because it's not a bad thing, but it's not a good thing. It could be good and it could be bad. So speech could be good and it could be bad. And it depends on how you use it. If you use it in a positive way, you're pulling the letters out of the negative energy out of the klipot, and using those letters to help somebody come closer to the Jewish faith. Elevating the holy sparks from the klipot is accomplished through fasting, which attaches and conceals the back of holiness. That's what we were learning last week. So we're talking about creating a unification between the Shekhinah and Hashem through holy eating. But what happens if a person isn't on the level already of holy eating? You have to make sure that everybody sees the morning kippah. Because from this angle you can't see. I look like Naftali Bennett from this angle. But hair, of course. But he likes to hide his kippah. So we started off that eating through holiness creates a connection. But what if you're not on that level? So then you need to fast. And by fasting, so we're basically talking about Yom Kippur and Purim here. Yom Kippur, how do we elevate ourselves on Yom Kippur? We fast. Fasting automatically, at a certain point, not the first hour, by the time the morning comes and maybe the early afternoon, you're already now not connected to Gashmiut, to physicality, you're connected to your soul. Because when you take away the eating, it allows you to have a settled mind, as long as you're not sick. And it allows you to connect with your soul. That's the level of fasting. But what's the higher level? The higher level is eating b'kedusha, is eating in holiness. And eating through holiness requires a lot more work than fasting. Fasting, in a sense, is the spiritual shortcut. You want to feel connected to Hashem, do a 2 or 3 day fast. You can drink water, but the rest you just don't eat food. I did this once for 4 days. You can yawn as much as you want. You have a good excuse, Ari. Don't worry. Ari just landed at 5 o'clock this morning. Even though technically for you in America, it's something like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So you do a fast for a few days, and what's the thing that you get out of it? You get a settled mind. You get a Yeshuva Da'at. And so on Yom Kippur, somebody's here? No. Just people checking us out. On Yom Kippur, how do you connect with your soul? You connect through fasting. But what's the higher level is if you're eating. If you're embracing Gashmiut, if you're embracing physicality, and you're able to be on a high spiritual level with embracing the physical, you'll be on a higher place, a much higher place than the fasting. Because the fasting, in a sense, is taking away your energy and allowing you to connect. But imagine adding energy and connecting, that's a much higher level. So that's what we're talking about, that we can elevate the holy sparks from the klipot by fasting, which attaches and conceals the back of holiness. First we were talking about face to face, connecting with Hashem, panim and panim. Now we're talking about achor ba'achor, behind with behind. The klipot then are unable to draw sustenance from there. So we don't want the klipot to draw energy. Where does the negative energy in the world draw its energy from? It draws it from the holiness. So how do we deny the negative energy to draw energy from the holiness? We either fast, and then it doesn't have any temptations to trick us up on. So I guess if a person were to eat when they're fasting, that would be the ultimate giving the negative energy from the holiness. But if a person says, nope, it's Yom Kippur, I'm not going to eat, and they fast, they're denying the energy to the negative energy to klipot, and then they take it away from them. On the other hand, you can be strong enough that when the klipot come, when the negative energy comes, it doesn't break you, and in the same way you can deny it. But if the klipot, if a person is unable to avoid the temptation of the Yetzer Hara, and it takes from a person doing a mitzvah, it actually causes the negative energy to vomit the holy sparks that they swallowed, restoring those sparks to holiness. With no life force left on the other side, those that are distant from God turn to the true faith. Okay, so that's where a general overview of where we are, and now we're getting a little deeper into this idea. Now he's going to talk about how the whole thing that we talked about above, the secret that we talked about above, of how fasting creates a connection to Hashem, but it doesn't do it face to face like when you're eating. It does it back to back in a sense, behind to behind, which is not the best way, but it is a way. So basically, Yom Kippur is not the best way to connect with Hashem. The best way is Purim. But if you can't connect with Purim, at least you have Yom Kippur. That's like the minimum. So I didn't finish here. אתה ויבאר כיצד כל הסוד הנ"ל רמוז בירידת אברהם ושרה למצרים. It's going to explain how everything that we mentioned before is hinted at when Abraham and Sarah went down to Egypt. V'shviata, did I say that right? V'shviata shel Sarah etzel Pharaoh. And Sarah's captivity by Pharaoh. She was taken by Pharaoh because Abraham said that Sarah was his sister. V'kol zot l'ra'a lo leFaro. But in the end, this wasn't beneficial for Pharaoh. It turned out to be bad for him. This is what it says about Avraham in Sefer Bereshit Yud Bet. Vayihi ra'av ba'aretz. There was a famine in the land. V'yarad Avram Mitzrayma. And Avram, without the hay, went down to Egypt. V'sham lakchu et Sarah el Pharaoh. And there they took Sarah to Pharaoh. V'Sarah hi b'chinat adibor. Sarah is connected to speech. It says, as it was mentioned, as it will be mentioned below. Mipnei she'adibor Sarah nishbah b'Mitzrayim. Because speech is Sarah that's been taken captive in Egypt. Meitzar garon, a constricting of the throat. Hatikun lazeh rav. Hatikun lazeh hu rav. So the fixing for the constricting of the throat is hunger. Hainu b'chinat ta'anit, that is fasting. Shemar ibat atzmo, that a person causes themselves to be hungry by fasting. V'zehu dveikut achorei hakdusha. And this is the connection of the back of holiness. Perush. Al yedei ha'ta'anit oseh yichud achor ba'achor. By fasting, a person creates a unification with Hashem from back to back, not from face to face. So what he's saying is that by fasting, we're going to create this connection with Hashem, but we're not going to do it in the most positive way. We're going to do it in, let's say, an unpositive way, but not a negative way. We're going to do it in a way that is essentially positive, but it's not coming from a forward-pushing energy. It's coming from an energy that is a result of denying our body food. By not eating, we're going to be spiritually elevated. But the highest place to be elevated is when a person works on themselves. So I'll give you a better example. It's better for a person to have worked on their emunah and to face a challenge and be able to overcome the challenge because they have a positive attitude and they have faith in Hashem and they have da'at, knowing that Hashem runs the world. But sometimes the person isn't on that level. And so they suffer. And all of a sudden, they see some way out of their suffering. And when they see the way out of their suffering, it gives them this burst of energy and it gives them hope. So one came as a result of, in a sense, a negative thing, that there was an opening. The other came from a person working on themselves and working on themselves. Constant work. Right? When Rabbi Nachman says, "Ve'ein shum yush be'olam klal," it doesn't mean that there's no despair in the world. Everyone experiences despair, but you don't experience despair because you don't give up. You're always going to push forward. You're always going to never give in, and that is the higher level than Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the level where I'm broken, but I see a breakthrough. Purim is the level of I'm strong and I can handle anything Hashem sends my way. So that's the connection of back to back. That is through fasting, you're making this back to back connection instead of the face to face. That is the backside of holiness is connected one to the other. And then the judgments and the stringencies are not able to be connected to the holiness. And the reason that the fasting or being hungry is the backside of holiness, Mispar Rav. So now he's going to do a whole gematria, which I'm not going to get into. He says that the name Havaya, which is one of Hashem's name, Elohim, is the backside, and it's the numerical equivalent to Ra'av, which is hunger. So the letters of Yud, K, and Vav, K are 72. And if you turn them around and count them the other way, it comes out to be 200. And the gematria of Ra'av, which is Reish Ayin Bet, is 272. I don't have a lot of patience for gematria. My chavuta loves to go through every little thing, and we'll sit there for an hour trying to figure out how is this, and I pull out my calculator. He's like, "Oh, good thing you have that schmutz phone of yours," and then at some point I'm like, "Can we just keep going?" He's like, "No, we have to understand the gematria." So that's the bottom line. So yes, there's a connection between Din and Gvura, stringency and judgment and hunger, meaning that a person can break the spiritual energy of the negativity through fasting. And we know that because as long as a person doesn't suffer, right, they're not really suffering at the end of Yom Kippur. They're just hungry. It feels like I can fast for another day. I can fast for another 5 days. You can sit on the other chair. You can go also if you want. Don't feel any pressure. Okay. I won't say anything else. Up to you. V'hereda v'hamitzrayma hainu horadot mimei achasadim. And Abraham went down to Egypt. By the way, my mother told me I have to cut my hair 1 more week. Just don't want to cut it again before Tishrei, before Rosh Hashanah. It's like 1 more week, then I'm going to do it. It's also annoying me. Hainu horadot mimei achasadim. So Abraham went down to Egypt. And what does it mean that Abraham went down to Egypt? That is, he brought the waters of Chesed. Now we know when it rains outside, it's called Chesed. I'm pretty sure that the snow is considered Gvura. But the water is considered Chesed. Water is delivered to everyone. It's equal everywhere that it rains. And you can use it for drinking, you can use it for watering plants. Water is considered chesed. So if Abraham goes down to Egypt, he in a sense is bringing chesed with him. He's bringing spiritual light with him. Ki Abraham hu hish a chesed. Because Abraham is the man of chesed. Chesed la-Abraham, as it says in Micha. Chesed was given to Abraham. Ve'enu mimei chasadim yordim lelachech mei hagaron. And the waters of chesed, of kindness, compassion, went down to Egypt in order to wet kindness, the narrowness. Internet connection was restored. Okay, good. That Abraham went down to Egypt in order to bring water, in order to bring chesed, kindness, to Egypt, to the Negev, and I don't want to get too caught up in there. Okay. So, ואז שנדבקים אחורי הקדושה, אי אפשר להקליפות לכנוס לשם לינוק. When you connect on the level of the backside of Kedusha, the negative energy is not able to draw its sustenance from there. ואז נתגלין הפנים של הקדושה, and then it's revealed the face of holiness. ואז מתקיים הכתוב, and then we're going to have what's written, ויהי כבוא אברהם מצרימה, ויראו המצרים את האישה, כי יפה היא מאוד. Because then we're going to have, so Abraham comes down to Egypt, and Abraham brings the chesed, and then they see his wife Sarah, who's physically very beautiful, I'm guessing also spiritually very beautiful, and they saw her and they took her to the ministers of Pharaoh. ורואים את היופי הוד הדיבור, they saw her and they praised ויהללו אותה אל פרעה, and they praised her to Pharaoh. וכל זה, so we're going to skip that, וזה הרמז בפסוק, and this is what's hinted at in the verse, אישה יראת השם היא תתהלל. A woman that has the fear of Hashem, or is a God-fearing woman, is more important than her physical looks, and she's the one who will be praised. Ki isha yirat Hashem meramez al hashchina nirmezet basara. When we say that a woman that fears Hashem, this is talking about the Shechina, because the Shechina is hinted at in Sarah. V'tit halal, and she will be praised. V'mezah b'chinat v'halalu ota el Pharaoh, that they praised her to Pharaoh. Shemitgalim hapanim shel hashechina, she'em motzim linok mipnei hakdusha, aval ein ze ela bishvil ma shene'amar la'achar mikan tnu la mipri yadeha. Well, he's getting really deep in here. I want to push forward. We're going to push forward in a second. That when the face of the Shekhinah is revealed, then they want to draw their sustenance from the holiness, but it wasn't for that purpose. Rather, it was in order for her to receive the fruit of her labor. Hainu lehotzi nitzatzot hakdusha she'mi beinehem. So why did Sarah and Abraham go down to Egypt? In order to draw the sparks of holiness out from the klipot, from the negative energy. Whoever's still there, I don't know what's going on with the internet connection, but hopefully it'll stick around to the end. Okay, so what were we talking about? Right, the woman that was praised and removing the life force from the negative energy. So I wanted to read something from the Sefer here, from the Black Book. As explained above, faith is enhanced and perfected when it is provided with an element that it did not have before. This added adornment is the nations who previously were distant in their belief of God that have now cast away their idolatry and drawn close to true faith. So this can be the nations. It can also be a person amongst the Jews as well that was far away and was brought closer. We're talking about kishutei emunah. We're talking about the beauty, added beautification or adornment of faith. And this is done by making an effort to reach out to other people. You know the tzaddik, the concept of a tzaddik in pelts. You know the idea? Tzaddik in pelts? So pelts is a fur coat. So a tzaddik that's in a fur coat, meaning that he keeps himself warm, but he doesn't warm up others. It's a negative term, tzaddik in pelts. So you'll have somebody who's like a great Talmid Chacham, sits and learns all day, knows everything by heart, but he's not teaching anyone. And if anyone comes over to him and asks him a question, he's very impatient with them. That's called a tzaddik in pelts. But a tzaddik that goes out and reaches out to people and brings them closer, that's like a real tzaddik. That's adding adornment to faith. If a person says, look, I have my faith, I don't have to make any effort to bring anyone else closer, then they're not adding any adornment to the faith. But what we want to do is, here he's going to explain. Reb Nassan writes that in our lesson there are two tikkunim. There are two things that need to be fixed. The first tikkun, by the way, I'll just mention a side note. I was in the shuk today talking with one of the vendors that I'm friends with, a Jewish guy, Russian guy. And I know he suffered a lot. He had a business in the shuk that collapsed. And so I said to him, everything's tikkunim. I said, that business that you had, that collapsed, it's a tikkun. He said, yeah, everybody tells me that. What does that mean? It means that all the suffering that you're going through in this world and the world to come, you'll see that it was in order to fix something and it'll be for the good. He said, yeah, that's what they say, but how do we know it's real? So we're getting into this whole argument. So I said, well, when we get there, you'll tell me if it's real. He said, but how do I know we'll get there? I said, if we get there, you'll tell me that it's real. If not, then it wasn't real. So, tikkunim. So there are two tikkunim. The first tikkun is the tikkun of the intellect, which we achieve by learning the Shulchan Aruch, by learning the laws. The tikkun of the intellect enables one to respond to the heretic, that is, to answer the questions of faith that are capable of being answered, and thereby overcome the challenge of one's belief in God. For example, the conversation that I had with this guy. A person that doubts Hashem has a real struggle, and I know because this was my own struggle for many years. I didn't grow up with faith in Hashem. I grew up with the concept of Hashem, but I didn't grow up in a religious home, like a kosher religious home. And the concept of Hashem was a little foreign to me. And at some point I realized, Marx is right. Religion is the opium of the people. There is no God. We're all evolved from plants and reptiles, and that explains everything. And at one point I realized that many years later, like when I was in my early 20s, that this thinking wasn't serving me. There was no benefit in it. I wasn't 100% convinced that it was right either, but I couldn't believe in God. It just felt like it was hypocritical to believe in God. But I would look at people that were, like rabbis or people, serious Jews, and I would see that they were genuinely happy and they had a real belief in Hashem. And I decided, okay, I'm going to learn to be like them. And I worked on it for many years. Now I have me and Hashem, we're good friends, I can say. We have a solid relationship at this point. But it took a long time. So he's saying, if you don't know how to answer these questions and you have a doubt of Hashem's existence, it's going to creep in. And so that's the first tikkun. The second tikkun is the tikkun of faith, of emunah. And at this point in the lesson, it's achieved by fasting, because we're not on the level to achieve it through eating. A person who makes himself hungry in order to overcome the physical desires for food and drink raises up the sparks of holiness trapped in the klipot, and then those that were distant from God cast away their false beliefs and adhere to the Jewish faith. This is what we call the adornment and perfection of faith. Through this, a person's faith is strengthened, and they are able to maintain steadfast faith, even when challenged by the questions of the heretic, for which at the present he has no answer. And with perfected faith, the food the person eats is purified, so that their eating in holiness can affect the face-to-face union between the Holy One and the Divine Presence. The Be'ibei Hanachal, one of the commentators in Likutey Moharan, points out that although we are permitted to eat the foods that correspond to klipat noga, meaning that foods that could go one way or another, elevating, for example, wine. Wine can be kosher and can be not kosher. Wine can be something that used for kiddush and can be used for something that makes you drunk. Elevating their spirituality, spiritually pure components requires that we eat in... my apologies, I don't know what's going on. We just got fiber optic connection in our house, this week. And the speed is so fast, and we have like the lowest level connection. It was like 800 megabytes a second or whatever it is. It was off the charts. It's just amazing. So here we're still in the old days. Also in my office, they don't have it yet in Binyan Klal. Okay, so I want to tell a short story. Always when I finish preparing the lesson, I normally finish like at 7:25. Give myself an hour to prepare. And then I'm like, okay, now you need a story. And I'm saying to myself, really? No, you have no mercy on me. I have to tell a story. So I thought of a story. By the way, it's Reb Shalom's yard site Thursday night and Friday. And Aliyat Neshama, Bezat Hashem, Shalom ben Yosef Yikuzil Zusha. So this is a story that I heard from him, and I'll tell you a personal story connected to it afterwards, or I told him the story, whatever it was. Okay, so Reb Levi Yitzchak Berdichev, he had a shofar blower, a guy that was a real professional. He blew all of the tekiyot properly, had the right kavanot, he knew all the kavanot of the Arizal, and he could imagine the different permutations of the letters of Hashem when he was blowing the different types of sounds of blowing the shofar. And he was a very serious guy and a Talmid Chacham and all of this. And it comes Rosh Hashanah, and instead, Reb Levi Yitzchak looks at this guy who's like a water carrier. He calls him, he says, hey, Moshe, come. Moshe comes, and the Rebbe, Reb Levi Yitzchak, he says to him, you're going to blow the shofar. He says, me? I don't know how to blow the shofar. The guy over there, he's amazing. Does all the kavan, does everything right. He said, no, I decided you're going to blow the shofar. He gives him the shofar. He puts his talus over him. He says, blow the shofar. And the guy blows the shofar. And afterwards, of course, the shofar blower, he's really upset. He says, Rabbi, what did I do? What transgression did I do that made you not want to allow me to blow the shofar in Rosh Hashanah? He said, no, that had nothing to do with you. He said, I saw there was a great, terrible decree on the Jewish community, and I know that the blast of the shofar goes straight up through all the barriers, straight to heaven. Your kavanot are all right, but this Jew, he's so broken. He doesn't have parnasa. He has difficulties at home. He has problems with so many of his children. And I knew when he blew the shofar, all of those prayers would be going up with his tkiyot. And so I wanted him to blow the shofar in order to break the decree. So when I was a kid, I would blow the shofar in the Reformed temple that I grew up in. That was like one of my big things. And it was always for the youth service. I think maybe one time I blew it in the adult service. Also, I had a whole little crisis because in our shul, the rabbi would announce, Tkiya, and then you would blow it. Trua, and then everything, and I got it mixed up. I got the order mixed up, and he didn't correct me. And apparently people knew. They were like, oh, he's just a kid, let him do it. But I was really upset because afterwards I said to the rabbi, does it matter or not? Does it count the shofar? You can't blow the shofar. And year after year, this went on year after year. I think we started in 2003 or 4. This went at least until 2015. Every year, me telling him, I want to blow the shofar. And he's like, you don't get it. You can't blow the shofar unless the rabbi asks you. He said, I want you to get to the point where you love the rabbi's shofar blowing. Where you are inspired by the rabbi's shofar blowing. So what's the first thing I did? I went to Rabbi Gestetner and I said, listen, I'm going to give you some tips. I'm not going to tell you about the Arizal. I played the French horn for many years. I'm going to tell you how to get the air in there, how to work on the muscles in your mouth, how to get the sound out, all kinds of tricks. I have all these little tricks. I told him everything, and the shofar blowing got a lot better. And so every year, it got a little better, and then Shalom would say to me, I want you davening for him, that he blows the shofar well. And I haven't blown the shofar. I blow the shofar at the end. Chabad has this thing where they do an extra 30 blasts at the end. And why do I blow the shofar outside of my house every year? Because of Shalom. The same reason I'm giving this class. Because he said to me, so you want to blow the shofar? Blow the shofar at your house. What do you have to do it in shul for? So I put up a sign and said, 4:30 or 3:30, whatever it is, playing the shofar, and every year people have been coming. And what was my answer to him? Why I have to blow the shofar? Because I also have financial problems and problems with my kids and problems left and right, and my shofar blowing has got to really break through all the barriers. Okay, Shakoach Har, you survived, you did it, and everyone else as well, even though we had internet problems here. I don't know what to do about that for next time. We'll see. Maybe God will take care of it. Let's see.